Hello.
Hi, everybody. We're so excited to be here today. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I'd love to get started just by saying how amazing Annabelle and Reagan are. I'm so excited and honored to be here with both of you today. You've both accomplished so much already as teenagers that it was hard to decide where to begin this conversation. But I figured that we should kick it off by speaking about entrepreneurship. I would love to hear about both of your experiences as founders of Annabelle's Book Club and Read with Reagan, respectively, from the very beginning to where the businesses are today.
You want to go?
Growing up, bookstores were my favorite places, and I've always been an avid reader who my friends and classmates look to for book recommendations. So during the pandemic, I decided to start an Instagram account called Annabelle's Book Club to share some of my favorite young adult YA books and authors. And there was such a great response that I decided to expand Annabelle's Book Club into a blog where I interviewed YA authors and bookstore owners and eventually started selling some of my favorite used YA books online to see how people liked my curation. I was so excited when they sold out time and time again, and it was then that I decided I wanted to do a pop-up event at the LA Times Festival of Books. And at the time, I had no idea how many books to order. I barely even knew how to order books, and I was so worried that we would have too many, but I was surprised and thrilled when we sold out of almost everything on the first day of the event. And it was after seeing that overwhelming enthusiasm for YA that I began to wonder if there were any YA bookstores. And after extensive research, I learned that there weren't any, and I really wanted to fill that gap in the market.
That's so inspiring. And when you were speaking about starting by selling used books, out of curiosity, this goes for both of you, do you have any particular books or series or authors who had a notable impact on you when you were growing up?
I love Aragon. That was one of my childhood books, series. I reread it so much. I also love Harry Potter, which everyone knows, and it's one of my favorite book series ever. And I think it really, those two series is what made me fall in love with reading and the power of stories. And I still reread them to this day.
That's amazing. And how long have you been running Read with Reagan for, and how did that all come about?
I've been running Read with Reagan, which is crazy to think, before COVID. So 6 years probably, which is insane to think about. But I started it because I would get asked, what books are you reading? Do you have any recommendations? And I was maybe I could just find a dedicated place to start. Sharing my love of reading, share why stories are so important. And so I started posting once a month, hey guys, this is what I'm reading. And then it is just steadily grown from there. And I think it was 2022, I got my own book club website and social medias, and it's just grown so much from there, and it's so cool and so exciting.
That's so incredible to hear. And speaking of getting started, I would love to hear about anyone who inspired both of you along the way, or perhaps gave you some advice that you might like to share with us today.
Yes, there are so many people who have inspired me and given me such valuable advice along the way. First, I'm so thankful for my amazing parents and sisters who have believed in me since the beginning and who are here today. Thank you, guys. And when I first opened the bookstore, it was on Black Friday in 2022. And the night before, on Thanksgiving, Alexandra and my entire family was at the bookstore helping me with last-minute preparations, unloading books, and I just truly couldn't have done this without them. And one of the best pieces of advice I've received has been from my parents, which is that if you're passionate about something, you should pursue it fully because that excitement will come through to other people. And I'm also constantly inspired by the incredible support of the book community at large. I'll always remember the 10 authors who agreed to sign books at my booth at the LA Times Festival of Books, despite the fact that I had maybe 300 Instagram followers and was 15 years old and didn't really know how to write an email. I've learned since then. But it's just been an incredible testament to the power of just reading and storytelling to bring people together. And most importantly, I'm every day inspired by our incredible team at Annabelle's Book Club, who are not only as passionate about YA literature as I am, but were willing to leave other jobs to come work at a bookstore run by a then 16-year-old. And I especially want to shout out our incredible bookstore manager, Emily, who has, Reagan and Alexandra know Emily as well, who has just been such an incredible, huge part of Annabelle's Book Club since day one.
Emily is truly the best. Emily, if you're watching on the live stream, we miss you here.
We love you, Emily.
And what about you?
Someone that's always really inspired me is Reese Witherspoon. I think she does amazing work in so many different aspects of her life, whether it's writing or acting or producing. And ever since I was little, I've always kind of wanted to follow in her footsteps. And I think what she does is amazing. And I met her once and I lost my mind. But I think just the message that she puts out has taught me so much. And also, you said it, but the book community also, I think, are so inspirational, and I think they're all such lovely people. Whenever I first announced my book, I had so many authors reach out, be like, hey, if you need any help, if you need anything, like, feel free to message. They are all so lovely, and just the support that they've shown is amazing.
That's incredible. And have you been able to meet a lot of other young writers through that community as well?
I have. I've met a lot through your store, which you know, but I've met some also super, they're so talented, they're so wise and so cool, and I'm so excited to read their books as well. But I've definitely met a ton of cool people from the book community and author community.
That's so wonderful to hear. And on the flip side, I would also love to hear about any of the biggest or perhaps most unexpected challenges that you both faced when launching Annabelle's Book Club and Read with Reagan, or perhaps any failures that you were able to in turn learn from.
When I first started looking at bookstore spaces, I had my heart set on this one in West Hollywood in LA. And I was so disappointed when, in response to my very enthusiastic email, the landlord responded with one sentence, which was, quote, "No one will ever come to your bookstore." And at the time, it felt like such a huge failure, and I was so disappointed. But it truly did turn out to be for the best, because we ended up in my dream space in Studio City, and I truly feel that the bookstore would not be the same without the space where we are currently and without the incredible Studio City community. As far as challenges, one of the biggest ones I've faced is balancing the day-to-day demands of the store, like restocking books and ordering inventory, with longer-term needs like scheduling events. But I feel that this is something I'm constantly learning from and becoming better at now that we've been open a little over 2 years now. And it's also been challenging running the store while being a student. When I first opened the bookstore, I was 16, and I was at an online school called Laurel Springs that was so wonderful because it allowed me to take all of the rigorous classes that I was interested in while also launching the bookstore and working there full time. And even though I can't be at the store physically every day now that I'm at Stanford, I'm in constant communication with our incredible team there. and I've been able to continue scheduling events, ordering books, designing merchandise, and running our social media from school. It's also been really fun because Stanford isn't too far from LA, so I've been able to come back for some of our events. And most recently, I was in LA for a book drive that Reagan and I hosted to benefit a school in LA that was impacted by the fires. So I was really happy I could be there for that one, and it was such a special day. But as far as balancing school and the bookstore, it's an ongoing challenge, but a fun one that I feel I've learned a lot from. And I also want to thank my professors for letting me miss class to be here today.
It's truly so impressive that both of you have been able to do everything that you do while also being students, and in your case, Reagan, also working full-time as an actor. And do you have any challenges that you would like to bring up?
My challenge is I am the world's worst procrastinator, and so balancing like acting, writing the book, school, and like managing the book club it definitely is teaching me time management and how to not procrastinate, and how Do Not Disturb is the best thing ever because I will look at a notification. And I think that's been the biggest challenge, just learning how to manage all of that and still have like a life. I think my biggest failure that I learned from was before the book that's coming out now, I was working on a fantasy, and I'd written the outline, I'd written like a pitch deck and everything, and it was set in upper middle grade because my book agent was like, I think it could like pitch better in that genre. And it's the first time I'd ever been doing it, and I'm also a recovering people pleaser, and so I was like, I'm gonna trust like what you think and not my gut, which was to put it in YA. And so we sent it out to publishing houses, and all of the response was, the story's good, but it's too complicated for upper middle grade, it should be YA. And I'm like, see, this is whenever I should have trusted my gut, but instead I was just too scared because I'd never done it before, and to just like trust my gut and like know that what I'm passionate for and what I believe in is like is probably the right way to go, and that my gut might be right. And so that was what I learned from that failure.
Absolutely, that's so well said. And with your book that's coming out this September, how different was that process from the one that you were just speaking about, that you were going through earlier?
The process for this one, for Rules for Fake Girlfriends, the one that's coming out, is very different because for the majority of when I was writing it, I was on set. And so it wasn't your typical writing process where you would block out 4 hours, sit down, do nothing else, and like write 10 chapters. I would be on set in like a dinner scene. I'd have my computer like hidden in my lap. They would say cut. I'd pull the computer out, like write 2 pages and then hide it again. They'd say action, and I would go back and forth. But because of that, I also really learned how to multitask, because I would have to go from like acting brain to like writing a book mode and stuff. And so it really taught me how to multitask and like switch between 2 different like settings, I guess. So I learned from it, but it was very different than I feel like a lot of writing processes.
That's truly so impressive. And on a related note, I was wondering how your guys' experiences have been as young entrepreneurs and teenagers starting their own businesses. Do you feel like your age has been an advantage or a disadvantage, or perhaps both, depending on the context?
Okay. I think it's pros and cons, because a lot of people, I'm 17, you're 18, I feel like a lot of people are like, well, a teenager can't run a bookstore or run a successful book club. Like, that's just like, you're too young. But then I also think like being young offers a fresher perspective than someone who's older might have. And so I think there's a struggle to help people or like make people take you seriously and trust that you know what you're doing. But then also you might have different ideas or a fresher perspective.
Yes, I definitely agree with that there are benefits and disadvantages to being teen entrepreneurs. I think that people really enjoy having a bookstore that's for teens by teens. So it's been really fun to bring that to the community. And like Reagan was saying, I think that being a teenager gives me a unique perspective that I hope makes our curation feel exciting and different from other bookstores. I also think that it's just really important to sort of celebrate these YA stories. And like Reagan was saying, when I first had the idea to make it young adult focused and to make the bookstore, it's very bright pink, I was concerned that people might not take me seriously. And you know, here we are at South by Southwest EDU, so it's been really wonderful just seeing the response and being able to celebrate these young adults and young adult stories that maybe historically haven't been taken seriously, but definitely are now, and it's just been really fun to see.
I definitely feel like YA is having a bit of a renaissance right now, which is great. And out of curiosity, of all the people that come in your store, is it people of all ages who are coming in and asking for book recommendations? Do you feel like different types of people read YA as opposed to just teens, which I feel like has been the historical stereotype?
Yes, it is definitely people of all ages, which has been really fun to see. Even though our store is young adult focused, we really aim to have something for everyone. So in our store, you'll find young adult books of every genre, but also books for adults, books for younger kids, coffee table books. So I think it's really important for people to know that YA really is not just for teenagers. It's very powerful and universal for readers of all ages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also love to hear about what the biggest surprise has been for both of you on your journey since starting Read with Reagan and Annabella's Book Club.
I think for me, it's probably the impact that it's had. Because, you know, you post like a book a month and you post it online and you don't really see like the in-person like benefit to it. You can hear about it, but like you don't actually see it. And then recently I've had people, like little kids, come over to me and be like, this book you recommended, like it showed me like why reading is important and why I love reading, and like it's gotten me into fantasy or romance or something. And I think that's been really cool to see. I had a teacher say that she was using my book club to help share like the love of reading in her classroom, and like that was so cool to see. And I think it's really just been like the impact that it's had, because 6 years ago I never expected that kids would be telling me that my book club's the reason that they found out they love reading. So I think that's just been really special to see.
That's amazing. And what about you?
One of the biggest surprises has been how quickly we've developed customer loyalty. Our customers really go out of their way to support us and to spread the word about our store and to order books through us, even if it maybe takes a little bit longer. And we just so appreciate it and couldn't have done this without their support. Another wonderful surprise has been just all of the incredible authors I've had the opportunity to meet, including my childhood idols, Judy Blume and John Green, as well as just the many authors who choose our store to be a part of such an important moment in their lives. I'm always really honored when authors want to celebrate their book at our store, and it's been so much fun. I'm especially excited to celebrate Alexandra's and Reagan's books at the store this fall, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I think maybe the biggest surprise, though, has been that the person who would become my best friend walked through our doors in December of 2022, and we started talking about books and haven't stopped
For 3
since.
hours.
And now we're up here together.
Well, now I'm gonna cry. I wasn't expecting that.
That's the best thing to have come out of the bookstore, for sure.
Truly.
Thank you for painting your bookstore pink, because that's what made me go in.
And on that note, actually, I would love to hear a bit more about the decision-making process behind the bright pink storefront, because it was definitely a bold decision. But how much of your store success do you think can be attributed to that inventive design and distinct branding of that bright pink storefront?
I think it's been a huge part of our success. And when I first started thinking about bookstore design, I noticed that a lot of stores were rather dark and masculine, and I wanted to make a store that was unapologetically feminine and very pink. And it was very important to me to have the store be very warm, bright, inviting, and really just have it embody our mission to foster community and represent a wide range of stories. So it's been a very fun process just seeing people respond to that. And like Reagan was saying, we do have customers who come in the store often and say something like, oh, I was driving along this street and I just had to stop and see what the one bright pink store was. So I think it's been a huge positive for our store and our brand.
Definitely. And on the broader topic of independent bookstores, it seems like there's been a big resurgence in their popularity, especially in recent years. Do you both agree with that assessment? And if so, how has it affected the growth and development of your store as well as your YA-focused book club?
I, of course, think it is super important. Even just the few days I've been in Austin, we've been to so many cool independent bookstores and met booksellers and even authors, and it's been so cool. And I think it offers, I think it offers a good collaboration almost because because especially whenever I was trying to grow my bookstore, or not my bookstore, my book club, and then they were trying to grow their bookstore, I think it offers a really good bonding collaboration, and I think it's really important. You can see new authors or books that are being sold there that might not be sold at bigger, more corporate bookstores. And so I think it's really cool, and I love independent bookstores.
Yes, I definitely agree that there is a resurgence in independent bookstores, which has been really exciting to see. And I think that coming out of the pandemic, people were and continue to be really excited about independent bookstores and bookstores in general because they really are such strong community spaces and really are just a great way to connect with other book lovers and your favorite authors. And I've been really lucky to get to see that firsthand at our store. But I think that this trend is even larger than that. And I think this can be seen in the fact that Barnes & Noble is opening many new stores to meet increased demand, which I think is wonderful. And I just think it's a really exciting time for independent bookstores and the book community at large.
You mentioned that you visited a few independent bookstores in Austin. Did you have a favorite one, or do you guys have any independent bookstores on your list of places to visit, just in general?
I went to two that really stood out. I went to Book People, which was so cool, and I went to First Light Books, and First Light Books had a cafe in it, which I really liked because I could get coffee and a book, and I really liked that. And I thought that I loved them. They were so cool, and we went to London together, and we went to probably every independent bookstore there. And it's been so much fun to see the book community here as well. It's very cool, and I loved the bookstores I've been to so far.
Yes, I also stopped by Book People, and I loved it. I've been meaning to visit for quite a while now, so I was glad that I could squeeze that in while I was here. In general, I have so many independent bookstores on my list. I'd really like to visit Parnassus Books in Nashville. It looks like an amazing store, and I'd love to visit one day.
And it's run by Ann Patchett, so
yes.
It has to be amazing. And Reagan, going back to your book club, it's been over 25 years since Oprah Winfrey famously launched her book club, and since then, other public figures and celebrities have followed suit and have created their own communities of readers. This ranges from Kaya Gerber to Dua Lipa to Andrew Luck to Emma Roberts. The list goes on, and I'd be curious to hear about how you distinguish yourself, your book club, and your book club picks.
I think it's super important that people with bigger followings do spread the love of reading, but I think what's unique about mine is that, like your bookstore, it does have a YA focus. And so there wasn't, whenever I started my book club 6 years ago, there wasn't really a place for like a YA focused like love of reading. And that was one of the reasons that I started it, because I wasn't seeing that. And I was like, well, there's no book club that I could go to get a middle grade YA book recommendation. And then I was like, why don't I just start one? And so that was the reasoning, or one of the reasons behind why I started it. But I think having more of a geared towards books that kids could read, because I think whenever you're a kid, it's especially important to show the love of reading, because that's whenever you develop that love. And so that there wasn't a space for that, I think was super important, that I'm so happy and honored to fill. But yeah, I think it's super important to start the love of reading early.
Definitely. And speaking of that, it seems like book-to-film or TV adaptations have become increasingly popular, especially in recent years. Do you both view that as a positive or negative for reading?
Yes, I think that it's been a huge positive for reading, and I think this is especially true in the YA space, as we've seen how series like The Summer I Turned Pretty, for example, really encourage teens to go out and buy the books, even if maybe they haven't been huge readers historically. But I think that this is really true for readers of all ages, and especially for people who want to get back into reading or maybe want to read more but don't quite know where to start. And I think that these adaptations in themselves are just so much fun and just really celebrate and bring these stories to life so beautifully.
I genuinely do not have an answer, because that is exactly what I was going to say. I agree with you entirely, and you just read my mind. That's exactly my answer as well.
Do you have any favorite recent series that you've watched, or movies that were adapted from books?
You know what I'm going to say. Shadow and Bone. I need season 3, please. I love that adaptation so much. They did so well with it. And the book series is one of my favorite fantasy series, but that adaptation is so well done, and I loved it. And anytime I have someone who's like, what book should I read? I ask, like, have you watched, like, Summer I Turned Pretty, or have you watched Shadow and Bone? And if they have watched adaptation, I'm like, well, here's a good book for you then.
Yes, I love Shadow and Bone too. And one of my favorite adaptations is, I know I already mentioned John Green, but I'm going to mention him again because I'm such a big fan, is the Turtles All the Way Down movie. I think it's a really beautiful portrayal of mental health. And I also think it just, as a longtime fan of the book, I think it really not only did it justice, but really amplified the story in a really meaningful way.
I loved that movie too. We actually saw it together, and it was great. And in the theme of this education panel, neither of you had typical educational journeys in high school, but now, Annabelle, you're at Stanford, and Reagan, you're at UCLA. Even though conventional wisdom might say that entrepreneurship can't entirely be taught in a classroom, I would love to hear what both of you think about how teachers can better equip their students to become entrepreneurs themselves in more traditional school settings.
I think it's really important because I personally am such a hands-on learner, and I also haven't been in like a typical classroom since I was little, but I've always been very much like I need to walk through something. And I think catering more towards like teaching kids about finances and how to run a business and more in like day-to-day life situations is really important. And I think that if you, instead of like talking to the child, if you helped them like manage a project or manage a business that is like a small classroom setting, I think that could be really important, because I know a lot of kids, even just like my friends, who are like, they're seniors in high school or going into college, and they don't, like, they haven't been taught real world skills. And so while I think that the subjects that are taught in school now are important, I think that there's also other things that should be taught as well.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. For some background, I went to an all-girls school, a traditional in-person all-girls school for middle school and my freshman year before I transferred to my online school, Laurel Springs, and then now I'm in my freshman year at Stanford. So based on my experiences so far, I think there are definitely ways that teachers can better equip students with these skills, and I think one way to do that is by encouraging collaboration and teaching financial literacy. I think both of those are really important. And in my experience, it's also been really wonderful being able to take just a wide range of classes and interdisciplinary programs that really push students to identify topics that they're passionate about and then think about those topics from a variety of perspectives. And at Stanford next quarter, I'm hoping to take a class that brings in a variety of speakers to discuss businesses and various other endeavors. So I think that perhaps schools could do something similar on a smaller scale, though of course it depends on resources. But I'm really looking forward to that next quarter.
That sounds incredible. And on a related note, I'd also love to talk a little bit about creativity and its role within entrepreneurship. Reagan, for you as an actress, you're thought of as the talent and a creative, and I find that sometimes some people can generalize and assume that just because someone is creative, they can't also be interested in business at the same time. I would be curious to hear about how you feel that your creativity has actually helped you in business and as a leader.
I mean, how you mentioned that I'm at UCLA, I'm currently taking classes for more of the behind the camera style for in the like acting film industry, and so more like producing, and that would be more of a business setting. And I think that it's taught me a lot about being an actor, and that being an actor has also taught me a lot about how to be a producer or how to be as like a screenplay writer. And so I've learned a lot on the business side going to UCLA, and I definitely think that they can go hand in hand. I'm acting, which is creative, writing a book, which is creative, but I also want to have like a publishing company or like a production company. And so I'm currently learning how to do that. I'm not there yet, but I do think that they go hand in hand.
Absolutely, and that's incredible and so inspiring that you're managing to do all of this at the same time. And this question is for Annabelle. I know you touched on this a little bit earlier when you were speaking about your bright pink storefront, but I would love to hear a little bit more about how you think that such distinct branding can actually help grow your brand in ways maybe that you didn't expect. I know that you have an extensive collection of merchandise that includes all of these different graphics that you've helped design, and I would just love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yes, so one of the major things that we have in our store, other than just books, is our line of original Annabelle's Book Club merchandise. And all of our t-shirts, tote bags, hats, etc. follow a pop art theme because that's something that I've always been really drawn to. So I think it does go hand in hand with our bright pink storefront, but it's just been really fun seeing how people respond to our really vivid, creative feeling and just commitment to that through not only the physical store and its exterior, but the merchandise and other aspects of the store as well.
Absolutely. And Reagan, I have a follow-up question for you as well. You mentioned Reese Witherspoon as being one of your biggest inspirations earlier. In addition to writing and acting and producing, you're also a member of the Hello Sunshine Collective, which is amazing. Could you tell us a little bit more about this incubator and why it's so important for female content creators and specifically for you and your brand?
I think it's really important because it creates, and the collective creates an amazing space for content creators and just people to show what they love, and it creates a space for them to, like, whenever we had a collective meeting, there were so many different kinds of content that people made. There was a cook, there was a like an Olympic diver. There was so many different venues of creativity that was shown, and it was so inspirational, and it really does help uplift people. Whenever we went in person and we met everyone, it was so uplifting. People were talking and making friendships and stuff, and everyone was like, if you ever like need anything, like, we're here for you. And it's just the most uplifting, positive space, and I think that's really important to have. And I'm so honored to be in the collective. It's so cool, and I still second guess that I'm in that because, like, it's crazy. But everyone is the absolute sweetest, and it's just so positive and uplifting, and I think it's really important to have.
Absolutely. And speaking of supportive communities, Annabelle, you've had an all-female team at Annabelle's Book Club since the very beginning. Was that always something that was important to you and intentional, or how did that come about?
Yes, so thinking back to the beginning of the bookstore and designing it, I was really lucky to work with an incredibly talented all-female design team who just really understood my vision and brought it to life so beautifully. And one of the things I'm most proud of with the store is that I truly believe that everyone, regardless of their age, can find something they love there, but our focus is on young women, so it was very important to me to have our space reflect that.
And finally, what's next for both of you guys? You both have so much going on. I'm sure everyone is dying to hear, as am I, about what might be next.
I mean, as I mentioned, the classes I'm taking at UCLA, I hope to apply that to real life, hopefully. So I want to be like a screenwriter and stuff, and so I'm learning about that. It's definitely a learning curve, but I hope to apply that at some point. I've spent the last year or so pitching a movie that I have, so I'm hoping that turns out well. And then my book, which comes out September 2nd, that's really what I've been focused on. And I have a few book ideas that I'm toying with. You know my idea that I'm working with right now. And I'm working on that. And acting still. The industry is kind of starting to pick back up. So we're starting to see it live and more, which is very exciting. So yeah, mainly book right now, but who knows?
Currently, I'm planning to major in design, which is an interdisciplinary program in Stanford School of Engineering that combines technology, business factors, and aesthetics. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm also planning to minor in creative writing. And I'm really excited about learning more about publishing and all sides of the book industry in the future. As far as the bookstore, I hope that Annabelle's Book Club will become a place where people will go to find new, exciting books and connect with fellow book lovers and their favorite authors. In a dream world, I would love to launch a young adult imprint. And I would also love to see Annabelle's Book Club expand to other cities. This is actually my first time in Austin, and I really love it here. So maybe one day you'll see Annabelle's Book Club Austin.
That would be amazing.
I would love that.
And it looks like we have some audience questions as well for both of you. The first one is, if you could go back to the beginning of your journey and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think probably if I was to go back to, let's say me when I started like the book club and everything, I would say probably trust your gut a bit more, which is funny because that's the advice I gave earlier. But I think really I didn't know what I was doing, and I wasn't sure if it was going to work out, and I was learning so much, and I more so was going with what other people were advising than what my gut was telling me. And I think it's a balance of trusting the people who are helping guide you through this and also knowing what you want and your passion. And it would just be telling my younger self, you got this, trust your gut, book club's gonna go well.
Yes. One of the most valuable things I think I've learned throughout this process is that, especially when launching a small business, it's really important not to wait until everything is perfectly aligned, because it is unlikely, in my experience, that you will reach that point where you feel 100% set with everything. And it's really important to, after arranging everything, to really go for it, especially if it's something where, at least with the bookstore, where I felt like I was hoping to meet a increased demand for these in-person spaces and for storytelling. And I also wish that I could tell my younger self that I would be speaking here today. I don't think she would have believed it, and she would have been very excited, as I am today.
And another question just came in. In an age of short-form content and digital storytelling, how do you think that people can remain engaged with traditional long-form storytelling?
I think it's really important to have these in-person spaces like independent bookstores where people can continue to see the power of storytelling to connect you with other people, because I think that's what's so powerful about just long-form literature. And I think at the bookstore we have a lot of discussions and conversations around these books. And I think having those in person is really unmatched and is just such a wonderful way to connect with people and so enriching. And I actually think that digital storytelling and, in general, social media can actually help people engage with physical books again. I think with things like Book Talk or even Instagram, it's been really wonderful. I mean, we both started on Instagram, and so I think it's actually really, really wonderful that digital technologies can then help us reconnect with physical books.
I mean, how you were saying, like, creating, like, the spaces where people can love books, I honestly think your store does an amazing job of that, because I see, like, events that you guys have where you have a ton of kids who are so excited to go and pick up a book and just sit down and read, and also, like, meet other kids and stuff. And I think that's so important to have, to keep reading, you know, fun and not a chore, because it shouldn't be. And I think that you guys do a really good job of that. I just had to say that.
Thank you.
Another question, do you feel that social media activism around literature is truly making an impact, or do you feel like it's sometimes performative? And how can you ensure real change?
I think Book Talk, and I don't know the official book, is it Bookstagram? Is that what it is? I think it's Bookstagram. I think it's really important because it can uplift small authors' voices who wouldn't normally, or it wouldn't have been easy to promote their book. If someone loves a book and they post about it and that video goes big, then all those people could potentially go and buy that book and uplift that author. And so I think it does have a great impact, and I think it does change the literature space for the better.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And one thing that's been really important to me ever since, even when Annabelle's Book Club was just an Instagram account, was highlighting these newer voices in YA and historically underrepresented stories as well. And at the bookstore, we've been really lucky to get to host a lot of debut authors, these two included, in the fall. So that's been really wonderful to see, too, just sort of making space for those voices to be heard. And I also think that social media is truly transformative for especially new authors. I mean, you hear of authors who get publishing deals just based on a viral video. Or
I think that it is impacting it for the better, and it is making a lot of change. And I think it is really helpful for small authors to grow and should not be as judged as much as it is.
Next question, what was the best resource for learning how to start your own business?
One thing that was really helpful for me and that I was incredibly lucky to be able to do was to speak with a lot of other bookstore owners and just people in the book industry in general. I remember particularly speaking to Josh Spencer, who is the founder of The Last Bookstore, an incredible bookstore in LA, and John Evans at Diesel, who were just really generous with their time and their advice. So I think if possible, it's always extremely helpful to talk to people in the field that you're hoping to go into or to launch some sort of business in. And I continue to gain valuable advice from these people even now.
I think same, talking to people who run their own book clubs and getting advice from them and just hearing about their experience was super helpful. And it especially showed whenever I was first starting out, like them talking about how they didn't really know what they were doing whenever they first started their book club. I was like, okay, so it's not just me. Like, they also didn't really know what they were doing and how to figure it out as well. And I learned a lot from them. And now it's gotten to the point where, like, I can give advice on how to start a book club, which I think is really cool and kind of full circle.
Absolutely, and the next question relates a bit to this as well. How do you navigate being teenagers while also balancing your professional lives?
I had to learn a lot about time management, really. I don't do that well, and so I think learning how to prioritize and also not stay in your room all day writing your book and remember to text your best friend to go hang out is really important. And yeah, I really just think, like, setting alarms, a planner, love planners. I just got my own planner, and it's been so helpful. And I really think, like, just learning how to prioritize really helps me the best.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Time management is definitely a skill that I think I've fortunately always been pretty good at, but that I'm continuing to improve at, especially being in my first year of college now. And for me, balancing everything has been made a lot easier by the incredible support system I have around me, my family, my friends, my team at Annabelle's Book Club. So I'm really lucky to have that support.
The next question is, how has working in such a mission-driven space affected your personal well-being?
I think, well, as far as my personal well-being, I think that just all of the work that I've done with the bookstore and before it was a bookstore and a physical space with the book club has really enriched my personal well-being, actually. I think I've, in addition to learning so much about business and just about everything, really, I've met so many wonderful people, including Reagan, who I just really couldn't imagine my life without. And I'm really lucky that, I think this really increases my personal well-being, though, of course, there are challenges. It's just been a really wonderful and rewarding experience all around.
I think the same. I have met some of my closest friends through the book club and just the book community in general. And it's taught me how to be, because the book club is such a motivation-driven thing, it's also taught me how to be more motivationally driven, I guess. And it's taught me a lot. And yeah, I really just think my main thing is it's given me my best friend, and I'm really lucky for it. Yeah.
And the next question touches a little bit on something that you both spoke about earlier with some of the authors that you mentioned who inspired you. With book bans and censorship increasing in certain regions, have either of you encountered challenges promoting certain stories? I know John Green and Judy Blume, certainly some of their stories have been banned.
Yes, I think at our store, I wouldn't say, fortunately, that I don't feel like we've encountered challenges in promoting certain stories, but there are a lot of authors I've connected with, including Judy Blume and John Green, and also one of my favorite YA authors, Abdi Nazemian, whose books are banned in a lot of school districts. And I think it's so terrible, and that it's really important now more than ever to celebrate these diverse stories that really open our minds and our hearts.
I think because it's more like, for me, it's not like selling a book, it's like promoting a book or posting about it. I don't encounter the book bans as much, but I do receive pushback if there is a story about a diverse character or something. And I think, like you said, especially right now, it's so important to share like those diverse stories. And because especially if you sell a book or you post about a book that does have a diverse story, someone who reads that book, it can then open their mind and adjust their worldview and teach them how to be more compassionate. And so I think it's really important to promote those.
And the next question is sort of a broader investigation of this. Do you both think that the publishing industry is actually focused on diversity, or do you think it's more of a trend for them? And what do you feel are actual signs of change versus tokenism?
I think the publishing industry, from what I've encountered, I'm still learning so much about it, but from what I've encountered, I do think it's a genuine want to share stories. My editor and the publishing company I'm at, they've been so amazing with helping share my book, which is about a queer character, and they've been so amazing with that. And from what I've encountered, I do think that they genuinely care about it.
Yes, I agree. I think, again, with my with my newness to the publishing industry, I should say, I do feel that it is a genuine commitment, which has been really wonderful to see in not only the books that we carry in the store, but also the authors that we host there. And I think sort of a sign of this meaningful change is just kind of the increased popularity and just visibility of these stories. And I also think that there are a lot of wonderful publishing companies and imprints that focus on diversity and are really committed to it. I know Joy Revolution, which is an imprint by two of my favorite authors, Nicola and David Yoon, is really focused on that. And so I think endeavors like that are really fun to see and are a sign that this is meaningfully changing.
And Reagan, speaking of your upcoming book, someone in the audience would like to know, what were some of your inspirations for the story, and what do you hope that people ultimately take away from it?
For Rules, it was kind of a combination of a lot of different inspirations. I had a few of the characters. I'm the kind of person that will think up characters, not have a backstory or plot or anything, and be like, so I need to write a book on them. And so I had a few of the characters kind of made up without a true background. And then for the main inspiration for the story, I had a friend come to me, and she told me I'd known her since I was little, and she told me that she had a really big health thing that could be potentially fatal, and it really I was like, what? It really, I guess, made me think about what impact that could have. And then I kind of started thinking from there, and I was like, this could be potentially a really good story and a beautiful one. And so I kind of combined that with the character ideas that I had, and I got her permission for using her as the inspiration. But that kind of just combining a bunch of those. And I also think it's a really important story to tell. The main character is queer, and I think it's a really beautiful story that you need right now. And I hope people take away from it. I hope people take away that love is worth the risk. The main character, she loses her mom very early on in the story, and she kind of becomes very guarded with her heart. And then she has to learn that even if it might hurt you at some point, whatever time you had with this person is worth it, and that love is worth it. And that's the main message of it.
That's so wonderful. We need stories like that more than ever, in my opinion. And on an also related note, what strategies have you both found the most effective for getting young adult readers truly excited about reading if they weren't big readers before?
I mean, we talked about this earlier, but I feel like honestly adaptations really help because especially I've found, curious enough, The Hunger Games. A lot of kids watch The Hunger Games but have never read it, and if they're ever like, what book series do you recommend? Most times they've read or they've watched Hunger Games, and then that avenue can get them to read the book and then from there expand. And some people have found that they love dystopian fiction, and I think really adaptations can really help because if you have a kid who watches TV but then doesn't really read, that can be a great way to step into the love of reading.
Yes, I definitely agree with the power of adaptations. We did talk about this earlier, but I also think with book clubs like Reagan's, I think those are a great way to get people into reading also, especially because, and people come into the store and say this all the time, it can feel overwhelming if you haven't been a huge reader historically and you want to get into it, and then there are just so many options. So I think having someone really highly recommend a book and tell you why they love it so much, I think can be really helpful. And I also hope that at the store, by highlighting and offering such a diverse range of stories and so many different types of characters, I hope that that will help teens get into reading too, because they'll hopefully see themselves reflected in our stories and resonate with them as well.
Absolutely. Both of your answers were very well said. And I think we have time for one more quick question, if anyone else here has one. Looks like we have 1 minute left if anyone wants to ask anything, but if not, then that'll conclude our panel. So thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you.